Hello and good morning. My name is Paul Strey. I'm a junior here at Drake University, and I'm going to be discussing legal politics in Sudan, examining the history, and just kind of helping you guys get a general idea. So after tracing the history of legal politics in Sudan, I came to the conclusion that there are three main tenets, and these are expanding the rule of law, balancing legal pluralism, and dismantling judicialization. These tenets are especially interesting in the context of the regime led by Omar Hassan Bashir. Since Sudanese state was left within the wake, there was almost no more rule of law, which kind of breaks on that, and we'll examine why that happens. I would argue, though, that even in this context, the rule of law is still what mattered most to the Sudanese people. It is just that the Bashir regime took steps too far, and that's what ultimately led to its fall. So hopefully, as we go through this presentation, you guys get a kind of an idea of where I'm coming from with these. I'm still trying to explore and figure out more about how all this works. So I don't have all the answers, but I have some of them. But for the interest of time, we're only going to focus on expanding the rule of law, just because this is only a 10-minute presentation, and if I were to talk about all this, I could be here all day. So even though they're all equally important, that's what we're going to talk about. So for all of these tenets, colonial times are actually just as important as the modern Sudanese state, and so we're going to start with that. In 1820, the Ottoman Empire came into Sudan and began its colonization. Khartoum very quickly became an important commercial hub for the Ottoman Empire as a trade route between the two Niles, allowing them to get more into South Africa, or Southern Africa. And so the need for a legal and administrative reform became extremely important. And so in 1850, the Ottoman Empire passed the Tanzimat Reform, which did a few things, but most importantly, it changed the criminal and commercial codes of the region to be very specifically based in European common law, as opposed to any other system. But it also put an emphasis on Sharia law, for family relations, and that emphasis on Sharia law will continue to be extremely important in the Sudanese case, as Muslims within Sudan and non-Muslims within Sudan constantly battle out about which is more important, Sharia law or common law, and so we'll continue to see that throughout. The other major thing that the Tanzimat reforms really did for Sudan moving forward is it established this basis for legal politics. So prior to this, courts don't really exist in the same way that they do now in Sudan, and so the Ottoman rule allowed us to start that process. The Ottomans didn't stay too long. In 1890, they were forced to leave, which leads us into British rule. So just like Egypt, the British colonized Sudan and much of Africa. But Sudan was an interesting case in the British Empire. And this was mainly due to the fact that not very many British citizens actually took refuge in Sudan. So this didn't create a need for courts to be a way for the British people to be continuously reinforced as superior in society. There weren't too many Brits there, so the courts basically only were there to establish the rule of law in the civilizing mission of the British Empire, bring law to all the people, and that's how you get it done. So this mainly came out of the Penal Code and Criminal Procedure Act of 1899. These revamped the criminal system and the commercial system once again, mainly rooting it within that common law system of England specifically. So now we have a very English legal system with everything except for, again, Sharia law. The Brits couldn't totally eliminate that from the system. It was too important to the people of Sudan. And so Sharia law continues to be an important deal within family relations. And so the law was reshaped and broadened, but it wasn't dismantled and reorganized. It still pretty much held its same basis as it did in Ottoman rule. The goal was just changing where the emphases were placed. And then similarly to what happened in Egypt, the British put their new Sudanese colonists into positions of importance through the Sudan Political Service, or SPS. This was composed mainly of recent college graduates from Oxford and Cambridge who came into Sudan, educated lay people about the law and administrative rights, and then put them into positions of power within that system. So now we have actual Sudanese people being the main ones who are running the court system, and that becomes very important because it establishes rule of law as something that all of the people in Sudan ascribe to. And so, again, these bureaucrats are actually looking at British common law, though, as the primary basis, which is going to cause a lot of tension in the time of transition. So decolonization begins in 1956. The British start pulling out of Sudan, like they do all of their colonies after World War II. And this began a period of rapid transitions of governmental systems within Sudan that caused a lot of changes. So most notably, when the British left, they did so very cautiously in regards to the courts specifically. They kind of just pulled out of government in like the executive and legislature, but in the courts they were closely monitored to make sure that they would uphold this British common law system even after they had left the regime. And so then there's a brief period of democracy. It doesn't last too long. General Ibrahim Aboud comes to power in 1958. He tries to abolish the common law system, but is met with a lot of backlash from the courts and the lay people of Sudan, who have a lot of faith in this common law system. He actually lacks, or the courts are imbued with a sense of honor, prestige, and professionalism that Aboud and his supporters lacked. So he's only in power for a couple of years, and then democratic rule comes back in 1968. Here we see a rapid expansion of the power of the courts. As one of the main institutions that was used previously, it's continued to be the most important branch of Sudanese government. And so this continues up until 1969 with Colonel Jafar Nimeri. He comes to power from a military coup, which, if you know anything, means it's probably going to be another authoritarian dictatorship. We're going to see a lot of these throughout Sudan's history. But Nimeri was interesting in that he relied very specifically on pan-Arab movements, looking to unite Egypt, Libya, and Sudan into one giant Arab state. And so because of that, he had to abolish the common law system. It didn't work with what he was trying to do. He wants Sharia law so that it's all Islamic law. He's met with a ton of backlash in this and basically can't get it done for a really long time. If you look, he comes to power in 1969, and these acts aren't passed until 1983. So this is finally when Sharia law takes over in Sudan. So the Evidence Act of 1983 required all witnesses of criminal court to be Muslim men. This greatly diminished the power of non-Muslims and women, which tends to be a common theme throughout Arab states. Next, the Penal Code redefined crime according to the Quran. So now the sacred text specifically tells us what is and is not a crime. And then the Civil Transactions Act brought Sharia law into the brought the Sharia law into the commercial system. So now commercial law was also guided by Sharia law, which was something that was completely new. English common law is very commonly thought of as that. So I'm gonna brush past this because I'm running low on time. But Bashir and the NIF, or National Islamic Front, is the most interesting part of Sudanese legal history. He comes to power as well through another military coup in 1989, but unlike the previous leader, he works to suppress dissent very specifically for Sharia law. Civil war is currently going on because of the acts that were previously passed, and so violent suppression of dissent is very important for Bashir. He also establishes the Constitutional Court, which looked to review laws before they were passed, but he put majority supporters on that court to make sure that laws were continuously passed with this emphasis on Sharia, and he limited everyone's access to the court. So almost nobody could get on the court unless it was a case that Bashir wanted. And then lastly, he did use extra legal means through the security force to ensure that as well. So this is just some fun stuff, but we're gonna jump to conclusions here. I'd be happy to talk about it for years with you guys and questions. But hang on, I just got it. So to sum it all up, legal politics in Sudan, no matter the regime, is based on expanding the rule of law, balancing legal pluralism, and dismantling judicialization. Sorry we didn't get to those last two. I had a lot on them though, if you want to know. The Bashir regime specifically, though, proved that this was expanding the rule of law alone was not sufficient in creating a strong centralized state. The law and access to it must grow with it as well. Legal pluralism, on the other hand, needed to be kept in balance. Too much Sharia law or common law within the system proved to be unstable. And then lastly, dismantling judicialization simply accelerated the breakdown of the rule of law. So moving away from the courts into the legislature just proved to be completely unstable within the Sudanese system. So something must be done to restore people's faith in the law, not simply to tell them what it is, which is what humanitarian organizations in Sudan tend to do today. So once again, I'm Paul Strey. My paper, if you're interested in reading it, is titled Rule of Law in Sudan, or Rule of Law and Law's Absence, Examining Legal Politics in Sudan. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.